It's time for another episode of the Apex Meta Report. This is something I do usually every season to kind of rank all the weapons and legends. It's something we've done a lot of, and we're now back with season 3. After playing enough, I think I have a pretty decent idea of where people are ranked. So we'll jump in. Each legend will have a different tier. Now, I will have them in order of how I personally rank them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's how they're ranked. So pay attention to the tiers. That's the most important thing here. So what we'll do, we'll go through each legend one by one, and then at the end we'll have a summary with the tier list on screen. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this is kind of aimed towards a more competitive play style with players who are playing in teams considered, but I do feel like this accurately represents the average player too. There may be some exceptions. For example, you may personally rank Mirage higher, but this comes down to individual playstyles and how much experience you have with that legend. This is obviously just my opinion, and everyone else's opinions will be different, so if you have a different idea, then please share your own tier list below. So here's how the tiers will work. S tier is just reserved for the absolute best of the best. I'm pretty sure you'll know who will be in there. A tier is reserved for legends with great kits that heavily benefit your team as well as your individual plays. B tier is players that have some value to the team but not as much anymore, or perhaps there's some weakness in their kit somewhere. C tier is for legends that have useful abilities, but they fail to really compete amongst other legends. So we'll start with our one and only Pathfinder. S tier, he has insane mobility for you and your team. Now, this is really important for the new map specifically. Even though Pathfinder kind of got sort of a nerf, I feel like because of the way the new map is, with more open areas, with higher buildings that you can access, it actually benefits Pathfinder more than the nerf impacts Pathfinder. So Pathfinder's actually grown in power since the last map. Now, one of the first reasons, let's think about the way the cover works in the new map. Sure, there is cover pretty much everywhere through World's Edge, but there's more open areas. So you have to go from cover to cover through these big open areas where charge rifles are going to laser you down, people long range are going to try and shoot you. If you have to run that, you run the risk of getting knocked, right? But with Pathfinder, you can just grapple from cover to cover, which is a huge benefit. We all knew how important mobility was since season 1, and mobility is still really important in everyday engagements where maybe just going from cover to cover isn't important. Being able to escape, being able to push weak enemies, Pathfinder's grapple does it best. It is ultimately the best ability in the game, and I would argue that no other ability even matches it closely. Now, Pathfinder is a low profile legend now, but his hitbox is still kind of, I mean, it's hard to hit a Pathfinder, you know? It's not really broken, but it can be a nightmare. He's got such a small hitbox, so I feel like the reduction in damage, or the increase in damage rather, isn't really worth mentioning, to be honest. And then we have the Zipline, which is very powerful in the new map. One of the reasons for this is because of the way the buildings are. Let's think about that building in Capital with the zip lines that go right up to the roof. So many people fight on this. Unless you go right to the designated areas that you can zip up, it's kind of a difficult situation. If you want a third party, or you want to get up there quickly or from a different angle, Pathfinder's zipline is basically the only way you're going to get your whole team up there, and that is really powerful. There are obviously other buildings and higher areas on the map that players can sit, and being able to use Pathfinder to get up there really kind of adds a lot of value to your team, and I think that we're going to still see a lot of Pathfinders in competitive play. So that's kind of my overview of Pathfinder. There are very few cons to consider. The only con is the damage increase, but it's very small. Although if you do go from playing someone like Caustic or Gibby, then you probably are going to notice that difference, because it's quite a big difference from having that damage reduction to that damage increase. But the mobility kind of works in your favor. The hitbox is great. So Pathfinder, S tier. Next we have Wraith, and I rank Wraith as an A tier legend. There are a number of reasons for this, and it's pretty much the same reasons why Wraith has always been so strong. Her kit is just really useful both for individual plays and for your team. The portal is super useful for positioning and repositioning as always. It's really good for helping your teammates when they're damaged or downed. And now with the new golden backpack, being able to just get your player through a portal, quickly res them up is super useful. Being able to cross around big open terrain with the portal is great too. Being able to rotate with it in the late game is really great when there maybe aren't very good areas of cover. Like, I feel like there's less end rings in this new map where you're around buildings, which means you have to be more careful with rotations, and the portal comes really handy in that situation. Of course, the tactical is still really good for disengaging or just keeping yourself alive in tight situations, and that really helps mostly Wraith on an individual level, but can really help your team to survive for just that bit longer. And of course, the passive is still strong. Being able to know that there's potentially a charge rifle aiming at you from across the map can be good to know, because sometimes it's hard to spot players who may be ready to laser beam you from a long distance. I know the charge rifle has received a couple nerfs now, and we'll go into that more in my weapons tier list, which will be out soon. But the most important thing, it's still a very powerful weapon, and being able to kind of prepare for long range engagements is good. That's good. Next, we have Gibraltar. Now, Gibraltar, I'm going to put in A tier, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot of Gibraltars in competitive play. I'm talking scrims, competitive events, high level ranked. Yes, and I know that's crazy when you consider where Gibraltar was just 1, maybe 2 seasons ago, but his latest changes are really important. So let's start with the new healing passive. It's a nice buff, being able to heal faster in the dome, and with your team being able to do the same as well. It adds some value for sure. Being able to heal quickly in tight situations is really important. But actually, I don't think that's the main reason why Gibraltar is so strong now. There are a number of reasons why he's so powerful. One of them is that the ultimate throw distance has been increased, which means it's actually a really good tool for third partying now. Being able to get close enough to throw an ult on 2 teams that are fighting is really good. And remember, there are more open areas in this map, which means more opportunities to actually put this into use. I've had so many situations where there's fights on the edge of capital city, for example, or near fuel depot. You throw down your ultimate, bam, you've got 4 knocks or something crazy like that. And it's really easy to tell where the radius is, so you can literally sit right on the edge of it. As soon as it's gone, you're ready to push in and finish up any players. It's really good. The tactical throw distance has also been increased, which means you can throw it on your teammate or use it as sort of this makeshift cover for them to get into or get behind. A really good thing. And then finally, there's another buff to Gibraltar that's kind of based on how the map is. Once again, there are more long-range engagements. We have the charge rifle, and guess what? Trying to hit Gibraltar or anything other than Gibraltar's shield at long range is really hard. Pair that with his fortified perk, and you got a very strong legend to deal with. So if you get a Gibraltar with a sniper and you're having to go up against that, yeah, good luck. Okay, and there's one final thing about Gibraltar. Not only does the fortified perk give him more health, but it means that Gibraltar is not slowed by bullets. Now, we know how crazy the charge rifle is right now, but Gibraltar isn't slowed by this, which means it's harder to get the full charge out and hit Gibraltar with the full charge. And that means if he gets shot whilst trying to move from cover to cover, which there is a lot, you need to do that a lot in this map, you're not going to run into any issues because you're not slowed. This is kind of a feature that I've noticed on Gibraltar and Caustic being really valuable. Next, we have Lifeline. I believe she's A tier. I think she's very valuable in the current meta. Lifeline has always been strong. Her healing abilities for her team are really useful. Her passive allows her to stay in duels for longer, which is really great too. But the reason why Lifeline is perhaps more valuable on this new map is because when you get knocked longer range, the healing shield and faster heal time really comes in handy. Being able to have a shield to protect you and res your teammate before they come up or try and kill your knocked player is really good. And another thing to think about is that level 4 gear is easier to come by now. You can either get level 4 gear from a cargo drone, from a vault, or from players that have found either of those 2 items, and I honestly feel like getting a golden backpack, for example, isn't really that challenging anymore, and that's really good for a Lifeline player, because with the golden backpack you can revive your teammate quicker with a shield around you, and as soon as they are up, they have enough health to get straight back into the fight. The Lifeline Golden Backpack combo is insanely good, so I'm really glad they added that perk. It's really awesome. And I feel like we will see more Lifelines in competitive play. I'm not quite sure how she will be ranked in terms of usefulness in super extreme like scrims and tournaments, but maybe we'll see more. Then we have our first B tier legend. It's Watson. She's still useful in ranked, but I feel like only in super sweaty ranked games or scrims. Her value has kind of been lost a little because many endgame rings aren't really set up for great Watson trap placements like they were in King's Canyon. Sure, you will have situations where you can get a building and camp it and you'll be fine, but there are a lot more open areas as well, which means Watson's ability to lock down a building is, well, it's gone. She cannot do that out in the open, which does leave her more vulnerable. Now, that's not to say you won't get lots of rings where you have buildings, and if you have a team that's willing to sit with you in the late game rings, yes, Watson is still going to be very powerful, but I feel like she's lost a bit of value. She doesn't have any mobility to be able to cross the open terrain more, so if she gets picked off, she's kind of screwed. Her kit can be pivotal to a great endgame setup even today in the new map, but it's not as valuable as, in my opinion, any of the other legends we've talked about so far. Now, next we have Caustic, which I believe is B tier 2. Caustic has a similar issue to Watson with his trap placements, but actually it's easier to play around small pieces of cover like a rock and the end zone areas, forcing easier 1v1 engagements. This is one thing that no other legend really has, the ability to kind of funnel players into different directions or slow them, minimize their vision so you can deal with players individually. That is really good for 1v1 situations, but in a team setting, Caustic isn't that great. I mean, you can place down a trap and get off a quick revive. You can use it to kind of limit visibility a little bit, like Bangalore's smoke, and it's a great third-party tool. The ultimate's really good as a third-party tool, but when you have Gibraltar and Bangalore, they are both much better alternatives for what they provide in a team. Let's also not forget about the fact that gas can still slow and blind your teammates. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it still happens. And trying to deal with that in a team setting can be quite frustrating at times. But we will say that Caustic does have the same fortified perks. So if he's moving between cover, then, you know, that's great. You're not going to get stopped in the middle of the open by a charge rifle and just destroyed. You're still going to be able to keep running through. Caustic's actually my favorite legend personally, but in a more competitive setting or in a team situation, I think Caustic isn't as great as he could be. Next, we have Bangalore. Now, Bangalore's ultimate deals more damage than it used to, so it can be a surprising chunk to your health if you get hit by 2 missiles. The real value though is the positioning power it has, and Bangalore's ultimate is great for slowing teams or creating distance for your own team, and with more open areas on World's Edge, it becomes even more useful. I think that Bangalore's abilities are kind of overlooked. People think that her ultimate's not that great, but being able to blanket an area of missiles that people usually aren't going to run through, it really provides you a lot of positioning power, and that's actually really useful. Her smokes are also really great for a great tool to escape or just to deal with staying safe longer range. You can get some quick revives off sometimes. I do like Bangalore. I think she's good. She's not perfect, but she's pretty good. Passive is also really great for quick escapes on a personal level as well, so good job there. Next, we have Octane in B tier. Now, Octane's mobility in open areas is useful, and he still has the ability to push players or escape dangerous situations. He's able to cross open area a little easier in this new map because of his stim, and he's great, but there's nothing too special that helps the team in any way. I mean, you do have the jump pad, which can come in handy sometimes, I will admit that. I'm not saying Octane is bad. Actually, his kit's very good. He's a great legend to play. But when you kind of compare Octane to the other choices in a team setting, I feel like Octane is slightly undervalued now. I still believe that there are some great Octane players out there. His ability to chase down players or just completely bamboozle people with his quick speed is really good. But like I say, there are more valuable legends for picking in a team. Next, we have Bloodhound in B tier. And I personally think Bloodhound is B tier because their tactical is still really great for pushing players set up in a building. It's a great tool for aggressive plays and still has value today. I'd argue Bloodhound has more value than a Krypto just because of that ability to actually be there with your team and still scan nearby enemies. I think the Bloodhound passive is also useful, especially if you're sniping and you have a charge rifle, and the charge rifle plus Bloodhound's ultimate is a nasty combo. I do think Bloodhound needs a bit of a push up, and I was tempted to put Bloodhound in C tier, but it's okay. I think Bloodhound is just on the cusp of B tier. I think people undervalue Bloodhound's abilities and they need to kind of reconsider what they can actually do for the team. If you try to use Bloodhound more aggressively, it can work out pretty well. Up next, we have our first C tier legend. Yes, it's Krypto. Krypto needs love. The drone is an interesting idea, but it leaves you vulnerable. It's too easy to spot and destroy. The ultimate is good, but it needs a smaller radius so you can push players as soon as it goes off. It needs to activate quicker too, and maybe even do more damage. And they need to fix the whole exploit where you can just throw off your armor because it completely... I mean, the stun's great, but the whole damage thing is important too. Kryptos could potentially do really well in a well-coordinated team, but I'm just not seeing enough of his value compared to other legends personally. I think there are better options. So I feel like Krypto is going to have a buff soon. We'll see what happens there. I don't know. A useful legend, but I just don't see him really fitting well or synergizing well with many other legends. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my personal opinion. Finally, we have Mirage in C tier. I almost put Mirage in D tier, but I fought against it. Mirage is fun, but he literally provides nothing for his team. Perhaps a great kit for a solo player, sure, but I think there are better abilities for disengaging. Mirage is a bit of a wild card that manages to stay relevant for some, but I don't see how he could be valued against any other legend, really. And if we're talking about how he can synergize with a team, what does he offer? Ultimately, not really much. His ultimate kind of makes it so your team is in a 2v1. It's similar to Wraith's tactical in a way, but why would you use that when you have Wraith's tactical? I mean, you can pull off some pretty crazy flanks and surprise attacks now that you can leave your ultimate. It's a nice change by being able to leave it early. It's a great improvement from what Mirage used to be, but I think he still needs some love. So that wraps up our look at all legends individually. So let's take a quick look at how they're all ranked on the tier list. So Pathfinder, S tier, the only S tier legend once again. Pathfinder was S tier last time I ranked him, so no movement there. Wraith is still A tier, so no real movement from her. She's still a very viable legend in this new map. Gibraltar is A tier now. He's had a huge improvement over the other legends. Gibraltar is mainly A tier because he can throw his ultimate long range. The new sniping meta allows him to deal damage from a long distance and not worry too much about getting knocked because of his shield. And his fortified perk means that he can run between cover without worrying about getting slowed down too much. And obviously, finally, the tactical can now be thrown further and people inside can heal faster. Bangalore is B tier. She's dropped a tier from the last meta report, not really because she has lost value. In fact, I'd say maybe she's gained value, but other legends around her have gained more value in comparison than Bangalore has. And I do feel like Bangalore's ability to duel and disengage very quickly isn't as great on some areas in the new map just because there's more open ground. Watson has dropped down from A tier to B tier. The new map doesn't favor her so well. She can still do what she does best in the late game rings in some situations, but it's not always as reliable having a Watson on the team. I think I'd much prefer a Gibraltar in her place personally. Caustic has dropped down to B tier much for the same reason as Watson. There's less endgame buildings to set up in. There's less ways to kind of lock down areas. Caustic's gas is still useful in more aggressive situations and out in the open in some cases. And the fortified perk is nice too, but it's slightly downgraded from the last map. Octane is B tier now. He's dropped down a tier, not necessarily for any major reasons other than the map has less areas that are tighter. You can't just run around a corner, reposition. You kind of have to run through an open field a lot of the time, and that's a little more challenging. You're still going to get slowed if you get hit by bullets. You don't get slowed as much as other legends when you're using your stim, but you still do get slowed, so the charge rifle is still a big threat to Octane, even when he's stimmed up. Bloodhound is still B tier. They're okay, but they're not perfect. They definitely need some love. Mirage has dropped from B tier to C tier. I don't really feel like there's much value for Mirage personally. I don't know. I don't think he really fits in with the team. He's a great option for some solo players, I think. He does have a nice kit for solo engagements. His ultimate can be fun, but he's a very kind of selfish pick in terms of what he can provide for the team. And then we have Krypto, and C is for Krypto, because Krypto needs some love, honestly. So that's it. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this meta report. I will be doing another one for weapons very soon. Let me know your thoughts on this tier list and how you would rank things personally. Alright, thank you for watching. If you didn't know already, I stream on twitch.tv/thegamingmerchant every day from 11 AM PST. So hopefully I'll see you there. If not, I'll see you in the comments. Cheerio!